Rockdale Salvos, of where I am situated and work, we acknowledge the Gweagal, the Bidjigal and the Gadigal clans as the traditional owners of the lands on which we at Rockdale Salvos work, worship and live. We pay our respects to the elders and acknowledge their continuing relationship to this land and the ongoing living cultures of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples all across Australia and maybe wherever you're being joined from at the moment. We in the Salvation Army, we commit ourselves in prayer and practice to this land of Australia and its people seeking reconciliation, unity and equality. And on that note, I'd like to hand over to Zoe as our first presenter this morning. Thank you.
All right, good morning and thank you for your time today. So the focus for Anti-Poverty Week this year was focused around young people at risk. I'm a Doorways caseworker for the Salvation Army in St George, working with individuals over 18. So initially when I was asked to facilitate the housing webinar, I thought, well, I'm not a specialist in that area, and there are leading specialists that work specifically in that area that are incredible. So obviously asking if they could come today and do a spotlight presentation on the support that they provide directly with young people. So that was essential. Also, with this webinar, we did, with Oasis and Doorways, try to connect with schools in the St George area so that schools could actually access these live webinars during the week as part of the curriculum. But given at-home learning, it's been a bit more difficult. So the idea of recording these is also for key stakeholders that can, pass this on to community members, but also hopefully we'll be able to connect with those schools and they'll be able to, present this, as part of their schooling program when they go back. So, so initially, I'm just going to try to, so the PowerPoint, Matt, is not going to the next slide. Oh, wonderful. All right, excellent. So, acknowledgement of country. So it is essential to acknowledge the Gadigal and Bedigal people of the Eora Nation, who are our traditional custodians of the land on which this event is taking place. I sincerely pay our respects to our elders past and present. I'm actually at home working today from the Dharawal country as well. Okay, thank you. So housing support for our young people. So as mentioned, the leading providers within the St George area, Project Youth, Open Door and Oasis. So today they'll be delivering a spotlight presentation, some of the content around description of different accommodation options, holistic early intervention programs, rent choice youth program, specialised case management to help manage mental health complex needs and newly arrived, assistance to find safe, affordable accommodation and to sustain long-term tenancy. So they'll be presenting after this. So I just wanted to touch on the Salvation Army assessment line. So for a young person, so usually the assessment line is for individuals living independently over 16. However, if a young person is, 13, 14, there's no limits. They can speak to a trained professional assessor and have an assessment and be provided with immediate assistance. So it's a free emergency relief assessment line that is available Monday to Friday, 9 till 5. As mentioned, available for young people living independently and if needing help connecting with local supports. So the initial intake assessment goes for about 15 to 20 minutes and it helps identify presenting needs and assess financial situation and can allocate a gift card for essentials such as food, transport and medication. A risk assessment is also included in the intake, which helps identify any underlying concerns such as child safety, homelessness, including couch surfing, domestic and family violence, alcohol and other drug and mental health crisis. So the professional assessment, so the assessors are trained in human services. So there's a mixture of counsellors, social workers, community service workers, and they can provide information about appropriate specialist providers in the local area and provide a referral for immediate crisis as well. So that assessment line is really helpful in terms of financial crisis, but also being able to identify a crisis or any underlying concerns and to connect directly within that area. And they're highly trained within that call centre. So also linked to home. So a young person can contact this free crisis accommodation line anytime, day or night. The intake process, this is where the young person can disclose personal situation in a safe private space and be connected with immediate necessary support networks. The risk assessment, this process helps identify safety concerns and helps to resolve immediate risk. Temporary accommodation, so if a young person is 16 years or over, Link to Home can arrange immediate temporary accommodation directly. If under 16 years, we'll provide appropriate direct referral to a specialist provider for temporary accommodation, including professional case management support, such as the specialist providers that are going to be presenting today. Yeah, so I've just popped the specialist providers contacts on here as well. So yeah, they are the leading specialist providers. So they're going to be talking to us now. I just want to say to Project Youth and Open Door and Oasis that I sincerely appreciate your time today. Obviously on the ground, we see the wraparound integrated case management that all of your services provide young people. And yeah, we are very grateful that you're sharing your time with us today. So thank you. And so now Oasis Youth Support Network team leader will be delivering a spotlight presentation.
Hi everyone. My name is Will and I'm the team leader of the case management team here at Oasis Crisis and our transitional service here in Surrey Hills. I'm just going to pull up these notes. Sorry, just bear with. And essentially, I'll start off with our crisis accommodation service. Like that's normally the age we take on board a client would be between 16 to 21 years of age. It is case managed accommodation. We currently take referrals either via phone or just contact just myself or my colleague Amanda, and I'm more than willing to leave my details post meeting. A lot of the cohort that we get here in crisis are just people off the street, young people have just been broken down families, people just referred in from other services. So we do provide that intensive case management here for these young people. We do have, I think it's 12 beds on site. And obviously we want to try and segue these people into, longer term accommodation, and that may entail going from crisis into a transitional accommodation. Now, the good thing about Oasis is that we do have transitional accommodation options here, and it's just offsite down in Darlinghurst. A lot of and that's run by St George Community Housing through their transitional program. Now, the lease, I think the program normally goes for 18 months. Leases can be signed between 3 to 6 to 9 to 12 months. I think the minimum would be 3. And that's just based on, we do an assessment after there's a phone referral is completed, then we'll do a face-to-face. Normally the client will come and check out the place. We'd run down through their needs with mental health day programs and trying to get them connected in the local area, just wrap around support intervention. So we've got a few vacancies coming up. I don't want to overpromise because I don't want people to flood in with referrals. We're like, hey man, look, we don't have any any vacancies. However, we are still taking referrals because we have some people that may withdraw their interest. So we're not saying no to anyone. We're still taking on board referrals, and that's just through the phone number that was given earlier on, that was showed on the PowerPoint. And you can get in contact with any of the youth workers here, myself or Amanda. And if we recognise that it's a transitional referral, then we just pop in the template. One of the youth workers or myself or one of the workers will complete it. They'll forward it to me, and then we can discuss how we can support that young person through a face-to-face. Normally with, and my colleague Heba, she is the caseworker for the Rent Choice Youth Program. Like essentially, that's the segue we want for any young person coming through who has experienced homelessness in the past, is that they come through crisis, they build up living skills, they get the case management supports they need to, link in with the community, whether that's, engaging in employment opportunities, study, even just working on their living skills. And then from there, we move into transitional with a longer sort of support period, hopefully over, 12 to 18 months, so that they get into a sort of like just getting used to paying rent and bills, just getting used to that self-sustainable lifestyle. And then when they move into Rent Choice Youth, which is like a 3-year program, I think we're all aware of, that we want them to be at a capacity where caseworkers are almost obsolete. And I think that's what the program is designed for, that once a young person is at a capacity where they can work and look after themselves, pay their bills, I think with the Rent Choice Youth Program, given that subsidy, that also helps them to save and achieve their employment goals or study goals that they're currently undertaking. So yeah, that's pretty much Oasis in a nutshell in 3 minutes or 3 to 4 minutes. But yeah, we are open to having conversations with other services about how we can support any of their young people. There's no closed door here. Happy to conversate and talk about our service offline. But yeah, that's us.
Thanks, Will. That's really helpful. And there are other Oasis services around, such as the different scheme at Rockdale. But I assume if somebody came to Rockdale and spoke to one of the Oasis workers here, that they would easily make that connection across to you guys. That would be something that could happen easily, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Yep.
Good. Oasis is a great team, and we're very blessed to have them. Zoe, who are we moving across to now? I believe it's Project Youth.
Yes, correct.
Okay, and who's our guest speaker?
Sorry, I was on mute. Hi, everybody. My name's Vicky. I'm the housing manager at Project Youth. At Project Youth, we have 3 specific programs that support young people from 12 to 25 years who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. There are housing programs, early intervention, excuse me, and education, employment and training. So in our housing program, we have 76 beds across the Sutherland Shire and St George areas. Sorry, I need some water. Sorry about that. So we have our crisis refuges. We have one crisis refuge in St George, and the other one is in Sutherland Shire, which house 5 young people in each house. They all have single bedrooms. Special consideration can be given to young people under 16 years, but basically our age range in our crisis refuges is 16 to 19 years. Currently, though, we are housing some 15-year-olds. So young people are welcomed into our refuges as a safe and affordable place to stay with on-site 24-hour support. They can stay for up to 3 months and are allocated a case manager and learn skills which will help them to live independently. These skills range from cooking and cleaning and managing a budget to applying for jobs or accessing education and training. The young people are also supported to form connections with family, if not already there, and the community, and to access specialist services for mental health, counselling or other issues they may be facing. So young people, while at the refuge, can enjoy activities with the staff or each other, including cooking, social activities like beach outings, movies, painting, bake-offs, board games, things like that. And we also help them to get to the next step in their lives. So young people don't need to be on an income to access our accommodation in crisis refuges, but however, once they're in receipt of Centrelink, they'll be expected to contribute to board, which includes rent and food and all bills. The next step in accommodation is our semi-supported. So we have 3 semi-supported houses, and all 3 are in the Sutherland Shire. We have Henry's at Janelli, which houses young people 16 to 19 years, and young people don't need to be on an income or engage in any educational training to apply into Henry's. When they're there, we'll support them with Centrelink if that's what they need to do. And then we have our place at the Hut at Woolooware. That's also for 16 to 19 years. Young people do need to be on an income to go into the Hut because they sign a residential tenancy agreement to live there. We also have Jacaranda at Caringbah, which is for females only. Their age range is a little bit different. They're 16 to 24 years. Each house has 4 single bedrooms, and they're supported by a caseworker who works flexible hours between Monday to Friday. So in those houses, young people can't be under the age of 16 because it's not staffed 24/7. And then in Jacaranda, the young people also have access to on-call supports as well. So young people can stay in those houses and Jacaranda for up to 12 months, and the Hut and Henry's for up to 18 months. And while they're there, they engage in case management supports, which is a requirement of the program. And we also support them to access external services that they may need. So Henry's, if a young person is on an income, the board includes food, and it's estimated based on their income. To stay in Jacaranda and the Hut, which they're on the residential lease, it's 25% of a young person's income, and they also contribute to utilities as well. For referrals, young people can refer directly for supports, or external support services can refer them. The majority of our referrals into crisis and semi-supported accommodation are self-referrals, and then the next being external services. The next step is transitional housing. So transitional housing, across all of Project Youth, we have 76 beds. 56 of those are in our transitional accommodation across St George and the Sutherland Shire. And young people often move from our crisis refuges or semi-independent into the transitional accommodation, but you don't have to have lived in Project Youth accommodation to refer directly into transitional supports. So transitional accommodation is for young people 16 to 24 years, and generally they're shared properties, 2 or 3 bedrooms. We do have some single units, but they're very, very popular and hard to refer into as well. So to live in transitional housing, a young person must be on an income because they sign a residential tenancy agreement. And rent is charged at 25% of income, and then plus utilities. So a young person must be on at minimum, the Centrelink out of home rate of youth allowance or job seeker. So transitional housing is a case management program, and young people are expected to engage in case management supports. Initially, this is weekly, and which will progress to fortnightly and monthly as the needs reduce. Young people don't need to be engaged in work or study to engage in the transitional program. However, they must have that level of commitment that they're willing to engage in that in the future. Young people will be supported by the Project Youth Case Manager to address any areas that are impacting their achievement to independence, and that includes physical and mental health supports. The assessment process for transitional houses is basically in 2 stages. So there's the stage 1 is an assessment completed by the housing coordinator of the transitional housing team. And then this next stage is they engage in the case management supports over a few weeks to assess whether transitional housing is the right support for them. And then the final stage is going and viewing the potential property meeting the other young people that live there, and then signing the tenancy agreement. The next step which is an optional pathway for young people, is the Rent Choice Youth Subsidy, which is going to be spoken about as well from Lynn from Open Door, who we work very closely with. But it's a subsidised program from the Department of Community and Justice, and it provides time-limited, over 3 years, private rental assistance as well as integrated support to help reduce homelessness among young people within New South Wales. And it's available for young people 16 to 24 years. For Project Youth, young people must be working with us for 6 months to engage in that program, and must commit to 3 years of case management support as well. Other programs that support at-risk young people in Project Youth Housing, as I said, were early intervention. So the early intervention program, we do group workshops in schools, we provide individual case management supports and assistance to refer to other services. We have drop-in, we have music programs, family and adolescent counselling, court support, outreach, mentoring, and then the education and training assist young people to find employment. We have many partnerships with employers and training organisations in regards to hospitality, the RSA and RCG, White Cards, and we also have a working cafe, which is a social enterprise in Menai, which young people go to after or during their hospitality course to do a work experience. We have centres at Miranda, Menai and Hurstville where young people can drop in for support. You don't need to call beforehand. Obviously with COVID, our centres are closed, but we'll be starting to open shortly. You can call the office, you can send an email through our website and we'll get back in contact with you. But basically we have a no wrong door approach. So even if you contact our service and we're not the right service for you, we'll find that right program for you. That's pretty much us.
Thanks, Vicky. That's amazing. We're going to have some questions at the end, but I had a quick question. How big's your team there?
We've got about throughout Project Youth, there's probably about 52 permanent employees and then a very large number of volunteers.
Yeah, that's amazing. You guys have got so much going on. I think it's just amazing. So thank you. And
Yeah.
If you've got a question for Vicky, then we'll save it to the end when we have our Q&A. But thank you very much. And we're going to move across now to the team from Open Door, and I believe Joe and Lynn will be sharing with us. So I'll bring you both up.
Hi, folks. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good. Hi. Thanks, everybody. It's been really great hearing all that fantastic work that's going on. And thanks, Vicky, just acknowledging that, yeah, we do work very closely with Project Youth. Both our services have been in the St. George and Sutherland area. Well, in our case, for I think it's 37 years, we're getting on for supporting young people in the area. We are a specialist, we're an SHS service like Project Youth, but we specialise, I guess the difference is with young people who are managing their mental health, young people with complex needs and young people who are newly arrived. Although the newly arrived, because of COVID, we're not seeing so many of those young people at the moment. And similarly, our age range is 16 to 25. We're really focused on finding young people safe, affordable accommodation. And as Vicky said, some of those clients may be actually living in Project Youth or in, other of the services or opportunities that Joel will talk about a little bit later on. As I said, we work closely with other services, especially with mental health. We've got a really long-standing partnership with them. And so we're looking at supporting young people with mental health and not seeing that as a barrier to young people being successful and becoming independent, because that's a very big focus of our services to, work in a trauma-informed care framework and to build young people's confidence and self-esteem and decision-making so that hopefully we'll see them toward independence. We also look at the fact that there's more than just one reason for homelessness, and that can be financial stress at home, it can be overcrowding, mental health issues, family conflict or violence. So it's really sort of being aware of the broad range of issues that young people face. And yeah, again, seeing that mental health shouldn't be a barrier to them participating in everyday life, just like everyone else. I guess, you know, one of the things that I think we do very well is look at the interpersonal skills that are necessary for young people to share together, because while a lot of young people and a lot of adults would like to live by themselves, the reality is that they will have to share with other people. So a big part of our focus is on building those interpersonal skills like being assertive, learning how to negotiate, learning that you can actually make your own agreements. Like we've actually got our own resource called Share It, and that resource is on our website. That resource is articulated with the Rent It, Keep It guide that Housing New South Wales produces. So you can use it as a standalone, or you can use it in conjunction or adapt it any way you like. So that's just something for services to know that we've got. And we're also very happy to come and talk to people about that and explain it and all that sort of thing. We do work on a very practical level. We do provide case management and tenancy support. And that can even be things like, you know, visiting a property with a young person to do an inspection, you know, teaching them what an inspection looks like. Sorry, I'm in the flight path and I've got a plane coming over. So sorry, might be a bit noisy. Yeah, so it's that thing of, you know, going into a property and like turning the taps on, turning the lights on, opening the doors, all that stuff, and showing young people this is what it looks like to, you know, inspect a property, to make sure that, you know, you understand your rights and responsibilities as a tenant. We can also help young people with providing furniture and white goods. And I think probably for all of our services, you know, we know how to access those kind of, you know, supports for young people. I think, you know, and it's also things like budgeting, all the sort of living skills that young people might need to focus on. And like the other services, really sort of locking them in with the other services with education, employment, all that sort of stuff. I think that's probably enough from me. I might hand over to Joe, who will talk a little bit more in specifics about the actual housing options, if you're okay with that, Joe.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, so my name's Joe. I'm a caseworker at Open Door Youth Housing Support Service. So we cover the St George and Sutherland Shire area, and like has already said that we work quite closely with Project Youth. So I suppose where we differ to the other services that have already presented is we as such do not have our own accommodation. So we do more of support with linking young people in with services that do have accommodation. So for example, if there was a young person that contacted our service, or we received a referral from Link to Home, we would be working with that young person on, for example, accessing crisis accommodation with, say, Project Youth or with Oasis, depending on where vacancies kind of were. And or the various types of housing that other services have already kind of dabbled in regards to Rent Choice Youth. I suppose where we differ is we tend to focus more on the tenancy management side of things and young people being able to maintain their tenancy because we don't have the accommodation ourselves. So that could be a young person that was living at home with family, for example. We would support them as best as we possibly could to stay there. If the best option was for them to be in transitional housing, then we have access to My Foundation's properties at Mortdale, where we would put a young person forward for that property. It's similar to the other services that I've spoken about, transitional housing, where there is a case manager. So for example, my role is to provide case management to a young person. Before we were to refer a young person to, for example, a My Foundation's property or Rent Choice Youth, we would need to be working with them for somewhere between 3 to 6 months, where we would get to know the young person really well, to get to know what their actual support needs are, to ensure that this is the right housing for the young person. And we do that with any type of housing that a young person might require. With My Foundations, a young person can stay there for up to 5 years. Initially, they don't need to be in education or employment, but they soon do need to be. With My Foundations, the rent does go up every year. So what we tend to find is for young people, if they are studying, then eventually come the first year, they need to start getting some form of employment because the rent does go up, and the youth allowance at independent rate, they actually really struggle financially to survive, to pay the rent and to pay for food and whatever else they actually need to do. And the same is for Rent Choice Youth. With Rent Choice Youth, that's for 3 years. We work with young people up to the age of 25. If the young person exceeded 25, then we'd need to find a provider that actually could work with a young person beyond 25 years of age. Similar to My Foundations with Rent Choice Youth, the rent does go up incrementally the first year and then every couple of months after that. So it is important that when a young person goes into either My Foundations or Rent Choice Youth, that they need to be aware that at some stage, generally around the 9-month to 12-month mark, that they would need to be securing some type of part-time or casual work because they do tend to struggle financially. I suppose the main point of providing casework is really about supporting the young person in what their needs are. So that is about learning your rights and responsibilities as a tenant. It can be linking a young person in with education or accessing services for brokerage, for furniture, or to assist in paying bills. It can be around supporting a young person in money management, getting on Centrelink benefits or maintaining their Centrelink benefits. And all of those areas, when you're working in all of those areas, it then allows the young person to assist them in maintaining their actual tenancy. It's also important that the young person is aware that it is their goals that we're working towards. It's not my personal goals, and our job is to support that young person to gain independence in maintaining whatever the tenancy is that they actually have, whether, like I said, whether it be staying with a family or being in transitional housing or being in Rent Choice Youth. Often a lot of young people want to live on their own, but like Lynn said, the reality is living in Sydney, rents are very expensive. And so a big part of what we do is about young people learning to live with other people and managing tenancies with other people, because it is challenging. It is a life skill that we all need to learn, whether it be with a stranger or a family member or a friend. There are issues that will come up consistently, and it does allow a young person to become a lot more independent, and our job is to be supporting that young person through at times some challenging times, yeah. Anything I'm missing, Lynn? Anything that you'd like to add that I haven't discussed? Or
sorry, I was just unmuting. No, I think we've pretty much covered it, really. I think, you know, it's interesting, you know, hearing what everybody's saying. There's a lot of similarities and overlaps in what we do. Yeah, so I think you pretty well covered what we're doing, Joe. Happy to take I'll throw back to the chair. Happy to take any questions. So, yeah.
Great. Thanks, Lynn and Joe. And like all the other groups, got so much going on. I'm not sure how you keep on top of it all, so more power to you all. Zoe, I might just throw back to you. Is there any final concluding thoughts you'd like to share before we open up for any questions?
Well, so with Open Door, so I was introduced with it at our housing interagency meeting, and recently I was doing an assessment with a family, working with a family over 18, and there was a child safety concern. So the father had relinquished care, and the young person was 14 and got kicked out of home. So when I was actually doing my child protection report, I actually referred them to Open Door, but I was wondering if, because of the mental health aspect and because obviously the association with complex trauma, it's just, it's such a benefit to have that approach initially. So would services be able to refer like directly or would you prefer it to go through child protection if there is like at risk in terms of relinquishing care or being kicked out at the age of 14, you know?
So we accept direct referrals from services. We accept phone calls from young people, from family members, from other services. It really just depends on the avenue. Sometimes if a agency contacts us, we often ask if the service has or the person has been given permission to discuss on behalf of the young person. So it really depends on the call that we get as to the advice that we often get. We generally work with, our age range is 16 up to 25, but of course, like the other services, we do have a no wrong door policy. So, we will assist wherever we possibly can. So that could be, if a person was at risk of homelessness or homeless, it could be saying to that service, have you made a mandatory report? Does the young person give us permission to actually speak to them? So it really depends on the scenario as to how we kind of handle the situation and the advice that we would actually give.
And can I just put in too that if the person is 14, we'd be referring on to Project Youth because that we don't cover that age range, but we know that Project Youth does. So that's a really good example of how we all work together. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. And also all specialist homeless services that are funded have a database called SIMS, the Client Information Management System. And so we can actually see online what services have vacancies on that particular day as well. So yeah, absolutely. All the services work together and try and get the best outcomes as possible for every young person.
And sorry, can I just add in that we don't have a referral form. Like our preferred referral is ringing us up because that's the most direct way. Like, especially obviously with crisis, we want to encourage people to be talking to Joe, our caseworker you're meeting here today. And we've also got Michelle. We're quite a small team. I like to say small, but perfectly formed. But anyway, I think that's the go for us is give us a call. And even with young people, like what we find sometimes is young people are very hesitant to make contact, because of any number of issues, including trauma, just not being confident. So like we're really happy just to have a chat. There's no commitment, or we really encourage young people to ask an adult or someone else to ring on their behalf. So we don't do application forms at all. We want to speak directly to either the young person, preferably the young person, if not the referrer. So that's give us a call. We've got a brand new website we're really excited about. So yeah, we're very happy. Just give us a call. If in doubt, don't hesitate. Zoe, you're very welcome anytime.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we do ask lots of questions, and the reason why we ask lots of questions is to ensure that we are, I suppose, supporting the service and or the young person in the best way that we possibly can, because the last thing we want is for us to refer someone somewhere and it fails because we haven't got the appropriate information. So it's not about setting people up to fail. It's about trying to provide the best support that we possibly can.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. So I've got a question that I can ask while others might be formulating one. My question, and to any of the panelists can answer or jump in. As somebody who doesn't really have a lot of experience in this area, I'm just wondering what my responsibilities are. Say if I have a 15-year-old that comes into the salvos here and they ask to be referred to something like that, what responsibilities do I have to the parents as opposed to the kid? There's obviously a balance there around privacy and being a minor and stuff. Any advice? Should we just give you guys a call and you can guide us through that, or what kind of advice would you have for us?
Can I, maybe Vicky, would you like to take that, because it's about an under 16-year-old?
Yeah, for any under 16-year-old that's referred into our crisis refuges, we do an immediate ROSH report and at referral and then acceptance. And generally we will only accept a young person into our crisis refuges if they have consent from the parent to be there or consent from DCJ or guardian. So that's our responsibilities in that. And it's if a parent has referred us, not to say that DCJ become involved. It's just that we let them know. There's an updated under 16s policy, which has a lot of information. I think that's been a lot of work with services working with DCJ to get that going. And I know our operations manager was quite involved in it. And it's just about everybody getting on the same page about it, I think, because there's a lot of information. Obviously, DCJ have lots of policies and you can't know everything. So, but that's something that we are mindful of, is following the under 16s policy and going back to DCJ about what's involved in that and what it says and how we can support young people.
Okay. Yeah, great.
And I think also too that, it's looking at, depending on your role, whether you're a mandatory reporter or not yourselves, and or if it's a family member that has significant, risk of significant concern for the young people, risk of significant harm, which is ROSH. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's very helpful. And can I just clarify, DCJ, is that Department of Criminal Justice? Is that what that?
Communities
and Justice, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, otherwise known as Family and Community Services.
Yeah, facts,
formerly known as.
They just need to change their name regularly.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you for that. Are there any other questions from amongst our attendees? You could either ask in person or throw something into the chat pod. I'll give people a moment. Doesn't look like it, which means you've probably covered all the bases so well.
I do have another question.
Go for it.
So obviously work with adults, as I've mentioned, but lately there's been quite a few parents saying to me that their child, their young person, usually over 16 it's been, are isolated, socially withdrawn, and potential mental health and alcohol, substance use dependency concerns. So I do work with Oasis quite closely in those situations because they provide outreach case management support, but we only have the 2 case managers in our area and they're really busy because they service St. George and part of Sutherland. So with Open Door or Project Youth, if there is a young person at risk at home and the parents identified it and we obtain consent, could we refer in that situation even though there's not a tenancy concern?
Absolutely, yeah, because it's supporting young people who are at risk of homeless or who are homeless, and so those issues that you're actually are raising can often lead to a young person becoming homeless, and that's the last thing that any of our services actually want. So for our service in particular, we would be linking that young person in with appropriate services within the geographical areas, because all of our services can't provide everything. So like Zoe will sometimes go to Salvation Army for brokerage to help, you know, whether it be for educational costs or for setting up furniture for property. Similarly, if someone has any mental health issues, referring them to mental health services, maybe like Headspace or something like that. Or if there were drug and alcohol issues, to drug and alcohol services. So absolutely, we would work, and I think it'd be safe to say that all of the services would work with young people, because the last thing, if we can prevent homelessness, that's the best thing that we can possibly do.
Yeah.
So,
and I think when Lynn was saying about the interpersonal, like building that capacity, because the self-esteem and a self-awareness and loss of identity, even though I don't work with young people, I hear their concerns from the parents, and it kind of, it's definitely that interpersonal relationship with themselves and others. So that's really helpful to know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the major things, as you say, like young people really are really affected by alienation, you know, and especially with the group of young people we work with, because typically, I mean, you know, just in line with what the broad kind of issues we're talking about here is poverty, you know, like we do work with that group, and typically they're not as well resourced, you know, the parents haven't got money to send them off to classes, or, you know, all of the other kind of resources that you sort of, you know, average young Australian person would have. So yeah, social isolation and self-alienation, I think, is a huge issue. And as Joe says, you know, we would be working our hardest to get young people linked into whatever it was, whatever support they need. Yeah, absolutely.
And Zoe, that's the same with Project Youth. Our early intervention team did provide external case management. And what we could do is we could kind of coordinate the case plan and refer out to other services and make sure those linkages are taking place and having that case coordination, because I think that's important, especially at this point in time. There's a lot of social isolation. There's, you know, a lot of, you know, some in young people increased mental health, drug and alcohol use and things like that. And services are, you know, really, you know, working a lot online, but we're still absolutely available. We're happy to link young people into services, or even just take inquiries from other services to see, this is a young person, what supports could you provide, or do you have any advice? And that could be, you know, Open Door, could be Oasis, could be Project Youth, it could be, I heard the council are doing these sorts of things. So, you know, we hear a lot of, because we attend network meetings, we hear a lot about what other services are doing and what the council are doing, the local councils are doing to support young people as well, so we can provide that information.
Yeah, that's wonderful, especially when it's direct. So the parent could be with the young person and calling up to get that information to see if it's suitable, which is really helpful.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Any last questions before we wrap up? I think we're good.
We've covered it.
Sorry, was it?
It's been all covered.
Yeah. Just to really say a big massive thank you to Will and Vicky, and to Joe and Lynn, and of course to Zoe for pulling this session together. It's been really informative, and it's such an important an area of our society that you all work at. So yeah, we just sort of thank you for what you do, and we just really appreciate your time today. So thank you so much, everybody.
No worries. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take
Bye.
care.
Bye.